Welcome in, everybody. The rare Wednesday morning edition of the Aaron Torres Sports Podcast. I'm your host, Aaron Torres. Hope everybody's doing well. Hope everybody's having a great day. You know, with the holiday coming, I know that, nighttime, you're not as in front of your computer as much. And so I figured rather than do the 6 Eastern show today, as we're getting set, obviously, for a holiday weekend, why don't we do a quick morning show? This will probably be the last live show of the week. We got some stuff to run later in the week as far as interviews and things of that nature, but this will be the last live show of the week. We got a lot to talk about, though. One, a bold statement has come out of the Kentucky basketball circle. Practice is underway, media availability this week. I think it speaks to me about how good potentially this team can be and how maybe some people are sleeping on the Wildcats. From there, it's college football season, baby. We're going to start talking. It's officially talking season, where media days actually start next week. Well, I'll tell you what, 2 very differing opinions on Arch Manning. We're going to talk about that. And then the Deion Sanders critics, you already know. They are out. They are swarming. They are circling. But are they right? We're going to discuss all that. So fun show, loaded show. It's July 2nd. And then we got a lot to talk about. That's all I'm here to say. By the way, media days again start next week, so we'll have plenty of college football. And as always, when there's college basketball news, we'll discuss it as well. Before we get started, a couple quick reminders. One, make sure that you are subscribed to the Aaron Torres Pod YouTube channel. New clips, new videos going up every single day. We really do appreciate your support. 57,000 subscribers and change. Cannot thank you all enough for all that you do. Also, if you want to do your boy Torres a solid, you can also download the podcast, Apple, Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts. We actually had a very good June on the podcast feed, so thank you guys for your support. Another very good June on the YouTube channel as well, so thank you again for your support. Speaking of your support, I want to also thank the support of one of our favorite partners, the official clothing partner of the Aaron Torres Pod, Feilbach and Feilbach.com, which, by the way, has a very special offer for listeners of the Aaron Torres Pod. Okay, so by now you know about Feilbach. You can learn all about them at Feilbach.com, but they got all sorts of great gear, hats, jackets, you name it, T-shirts, and of course, beyond that, they also have, a great summer collection. But how about this? In addition to taking care of the listeners of the Aaron Torres Pod, they also got something else even better. They got a special July 4th offer for listeners of the Aaron Torres Pod. Okay, so first of all, if you're a listener of the Aaron Torres Pod, all you got to do is go to Feilbach.com. Just search whatever is on the website, whatever you like, T-shirts, linens, pants, jeans, jackets, whatever you need. It is all available at Feilbach.com. And if you use promo code Torres, you get 20% off your purchase. Not bad. Well, guess what's even better? How about this? Up to 60% off the entire store for a special July 4th sale. Okay, so this is what all you got to do. Go to Feilbach.com. You're going to get 20% off with promo code Torres. But how about this? If you order more than 3 pieces, you get an extra 10% off. That ain't bad. How about this? If you're ordering for friends, for family, summertime, you're going to the beach, you need a lot of gear, you can also order, how about this? 6 pieces or more gets you 20% off, an additional 20% off. And then if you are ordering for yourself for a large group, guess what? You can get up to, and this is incredible, an extra 30% off if you get 12 pieces at Feilbach.com. So Feilbach.com, use promo code Torres, Torres, get an extra 10% off if you order 3 pieces, an extra 20% off if you get 6 pieces, and an extra 30% off with 12 pieces. I should mention, by the way, they just sent me all sorts of cool gear. It's comfortable. It's casual. They have the Stay Cool line. It's a T-shirt that keeps you cool when it's hot out. I'm not going to lie. My wife stole it. She wears it to bed every night now, and it keeps her cool at night, even when the place gets hot, all of that. I also got a sweet Italian linen shirt. Promise to show you those at some point in the future. But just want to thank Feilbach again. Promo code Torres for 20% off. And also on top of that, an extra up to 30% off, up to 60% off site-wide We appreciate their support. With that said, it's a busy Wednesday right before the holiday. There is no more time to waste. So let's go ahead and get to the topic of the day. Topic of the day, listen, I keep saying this, is that it's obviously a little bit of a quiet time in the world of college basketball. We obviously have the Team USA stuff going on. We talked about Mikal Brown Jr. at Louisville. We talked about Koa Pete. We talked about AJ DeBonsa, on and on and on. With that said, though, what's kind of cool is that all these schools at this point across America, summer practice has begun, right? And so every school gets up to 8 weeks of practice during the summer to just kind of get guys together and get them practicing and getting them ready for the season. I think this is a great thing. Bottom line is, with so many new players, so many new pieces, it's kind of an important thing for all of these teams. And there was an interesting piece of news out of Kentucky basketball this week. Now, before we get to the actual piece of news, why it had me fired up for a season that's still 4 months away or so, let me give Mark Pope a little bit of credit, right? I think Mark Pope has largely done pretty much everything right at this point. But one thing that I've noticed that he's done this offseason is, right now it is the summertime, and it is, it's a dead news cycle. There's no games. There haven't been any games since April. There will be no games since November. But what I've noticed that he's done is that every single week on Monday, they have media availability with 2 of their players. Not every school in America does this. As a matter of fact, I'd say most schools really aren't having any media availability at all. I think this is a big whiff for all of these schools, because what it does is, especially in the NIL era, especially in this era where there are opportunities, there's a bunch of new players. You never know who they are. You don't know what their personalities are. This is a great way to get players in front of the fans. It gives them opportunities to get their personality out, which I think in this NIL era, that is important, especially if we're supposedly going to true NIL, where players have to actually make money off their name, image, likeness. Part of it is your image, your likeness, get it out there, get it to the fans. But I think most importantly, it just keeps this team in the news, right? So Kentucky right now is basically the only one that's doing media availability for all of their players. And you're getting to know these players. You're getting to know a Mo Diabate, a Denzel Aberdeen, or whatever. But then also, it's just keeping Kentucky in the news. Every single week, there's new information coming out about this team, workouts, whatever. And so now you're probably sitting here saying, okay, Torres, enough blabbing. What is the actual news, and what does it mean for the season ahead, and why are you so fired up? So this week, Jalen Lowe, the new point guard at Kentucky, was one of the players that was available to the media. Him and Reese Potter, friend of the Aaron Torres pod. We had Reese Potter on when he committed back in May. But Jalen Lowe was one of the players who was made available to the media earlier this week. And so he's asked all the standard questions, this, that, the other thing. By the way, always make sure you're following our Torres on UK account for late-breaking Kentucky news, Torres on UK, okay? But at the same time, bottom line, Jalen Lowe was made available, talking about a lot of different things. He was asked a great question. Now, I don't know who asked the question, but they basically asked, essentially the Shaq meme, okay? And I've referenced the Shaq meme a few times, where it's Shaq talking about, I think it was Christian Wood, and Shaq just has to go on Inside the NBA and goes, Christian Wood, you're way better than I thought. I was not familiar with your game, okay? And so somebody apparently asked Jalen Lowe, hey, who is the guy that you just were not familiar with his game? You did not realize how good he was going to be when you got to Kentucky. Jalen Lowe had a very interesting answer. It was Trent Noah, the former, Kentucky All-State guy, committed to South Carolina, flips when Mark Pope gets the job. I thought he played pretty well last year in a limited role. We'll discuss it in a minute. But here's what Jalen Lowe had to say about Trent Noah. By the way, producer Matt is out today, so these graphics are not as fire and as good as they usually are. But this is what Jalen Lowe said when asked the player that he wasn't familiar with. Trent Noah might be the best shooter I've ever seen. I played with a really good shooter in Blake Hinson, but Trent Noah, gosh, he can shoot the living blank out of the ball. He can really shoot it. I love TN. So first of all, I appreciate Jalen Lowe. We are a family-friendly show. I appreciate him editing himself. I assume that he edited himself and not the other way around. But two, let me say this. I think this is cool. This is a cool quote, right? Now, listen, is Trent Noah the best shooter in the history of basketball? Time will tell, but probably not. But what I think is interesting about this quote is as follows, is that to me, it speaks to what I have been talking about since this Kentucky roster came together in late May, early June. All the pieces are finally together at the NBA draft deadline. It is that I think this team has a chance to be way better than people realize. And I think it's in large part because they are deeper, more athletic, and I think, frankly, just more skilled than they were a year ago. And so let's talk about the quote. Now, first of all, let me start by giving Trent Noah his flowers, man. This was a guy, listen, I'm not going to sit here and say I was not familiar with his game. Again, by the way, Jalen Lowe saying Trent Noah might be the best shooter I've ever seen, which is a heck of a compliment. But listen, what is Trent Noah the best shooter that I've ever seen? I can't sit there and say that he is. But the one thing that I will give him a ton of credit for is that he was a guy that, frankly, was just better than I think that I was expecting going into last season, right? I kind of thought, okay, he decommits from South Carolina. He'll be on the roster, but he'll be the 14th guy, the 13th guy, whatever. I think he was actually literally the 13th scholarship player. But he's going to be okay. He's going to be fine. It's not that big of a deal, whatever. And then all of a sudden, you have all sorts of injuries, and he's thrown in the fire. Andrew Carr has that back injury that kind of lingered all season long. Jackson Robinson with the wrist. He's in and out of the lineup and then eventually out for the year. Lamont Butler, we know, with the shoulder. And so Trent Noah gets thrown into the fire. And there was a couple games where, like, I don't want to say he was one of the best. I don't want to say he was the best player on the floor. But he proved like, oh, I can play in the SEC. I can be a contributor. I belong. We all remember that game against Tennessee. I think at the time I called it the Trent Noah game at Rupp Arena, when Trent Noah, 11 points in a win against Tennessee, a season sweep in the regular season of Tennessee. We all remember, oh, by the way, on top of that, don't forget about the game a few nights later against Texas on the road. That was, I think, about as banged up as Kentucky was and had been all year. And guess what? Trent Noah delivered 7 points. They don't end up winning, but that was a game that could have gone either way. They were in position to win it late. They just couldn't close out. And so, one, Trent Noah was just better than I thought he was going to be. But two, and to me, this is the important part and the part that's worth discussing here, is that I really felt like this roster, and we talked about it at the time, but individual pieces commit and you're trying to figure out, okay, like who are these guys? How do they fit together? And then all of a sudden you look up in mid-May, late May, when Otega Oweh withdraws from the NBA draft, and you realize like, oh, this team has a chance to be way better than I think we all realize. Because a couple things here. One, first of all, I think Mark Pope, we're going to find out, his best teams will be his deepest teams. Listen, we all know how he wants to play. He wants to get up and down. He wants to shoot a lot of threes. He wants to play at a fast tempo, all of that. And listen, his last year at BYU, let's not forget, top 25 team basically all year. Won at Fog Allen Fieldhouse as the head coach at BYU. Let's also not forget that on top of that, they were 6th seed in the NCAA tournament. Now, it didn't go great once he got to the tournament, but it doesn't change the fact that that was probably the team that was best constructed in the manner that Mark Pope wants to play and wants to build a roster. Well, guess what ended up happening? That's a roster that was like 11, 12 deep. I mean, Richie Saunders, Fustre, I'm not going to go through the whole roster, but I mean, they basically played a platoon, for lack of a better term. I mean, they played 10, 11, 12 guys. Everybody's fresh. Everybody's rotating in. Everybody can shoot. Everybody can score. And it's very clear that that is what he has brought to Kentucky in year 2. So when I look at this roster, the Trent Noah quote is a metaphor for why I'm so excited about this team, because I think you could argue, and I truly believe this, that Kentucky might have on any given night more guys that can beat you than anyone in college basketball. Okay, think about this roster. Okay, let's just start with the backcourt. Jalen Lowe. This was a guy that, we all know the story. We all know the background, but he played at Pitt. Pitt, in my opinion, wasn't a very, I don't even think it's my opinion. I just think it's a fact, wasn't a very good team. This guy, even playing on a bad team for Pitt, finished the season averaging about 17.5 points per game, about 5.5 assists per game. And it's funny because Mark Pope has talked about this, is the fact that, basically, for lack of a better term, you give Jalen Lowe better teammates, the stats should only improve from there. Otega Oweh, we've obviously talked about a ton over the course of the offseason. I think it's realistic that Otega Oweh is maybe the SEC preseason player of the year, averaged 16 points per game. He was Kentucky's most consistent player last year, most reliable player last year, and at times just frankly did not have a lot of help around him. I mean, I remember watching like SEC tournament against Bama and Oklahoma. I remember that Oklahoma game where Otega Oweh had the game winner. And you just kind of were like, dude, this guy really doesn't have a ton of help, and he keeps figuring out a way to get the job done. So he's back. I think one of my favorite players on this team is Denzel Aberdeen. We've talked about him. Sixth man for the Florida National Champions. If you don't think that dude was good enough to start at like 98% of all college basketball programs, I'm sorry, but listen, Florida had 3 fifth-year seniors in the backcourt. 2 of them just got drafted, Elijah Martin and obviously Walter Clayton. And so I just bring it up because Denzel Aberdeen was the 6th man. He could have started just about anywhere else. And I think the other important note on Denzel Aberdeen, averaged 14.5 points per game in games that he actually did start. So when he was put into the fire in the SEC because of injuries, he was a dude that delivered time and time and time again. You go to the front court. We've talked about a lot of these guys, but Brandon Garrison, I think, is due to make a big leap this year. And listen, I know I was, whatever. There was a thing on social media, whatever. It doesn't really matter. I like Brandon Garrison a lot. I think he's due to make a big leap. Jaden Quaintance, listen, we've talked about him. He's got to get healthy, and I don't think Mark Pope's going to rush him. I think Mark Pope wants to play him. But, I mean, that's a dude that averaged almost 10 points and 8 rebounds as a 17-year-old in the Big 12 last year. Mo Diabate, I've told you, I think he's going to be a fan favorite at Rupp Arena. He plays so hard. He's so talented. He's so gifted. Does all the little things. I don't think you can appreciate him enough and everything that he does. And then, there's the other guys that probably aren't getting enough credit at this time. Jasper Johnson, obviously playing very well for Team USA as a true freshman. Malachi Moreno got rave reviews, might be in Switzerland with Jasper Johnson if he hadn't got banged up at Team USA workouts. You got Colin Chandler, you got Trent Noah. I'm sure, by the way, Cam Williams, no big deal, just showing up in mock drafts for next year. Okay, he must be pretty good. Andrea Yelovich, you look at this team, it is so deep, it is so talented. Like a Trent Noah is a guy that we're not even talking about, and he has impressed Jalen Lowe as basically the best shooter that he's ever seen. So listen, it's early July. There's not a lot going on, but when I can get a quote that juicy, that gets me that fired up for the start of college hoops, I'm sorry, but I am fired up. I'm ready to go. And shout out Jalen Lowe. Shout out Mark Pope for making his players available and giving us plenty of content, plenty to discuss. And I think it speaks to the fact Kentucky is, in my opinion, as deep as anybody in college basketball, as athletic as anybody in college basketball. That's why I have them in my preseason top 3 to start the 2025-2026 season. All right, so what we're going to do, we're going to take a quick break, come back. When we do, we'll hit on a couple football topics. The Arch Manning takes, they're flying. Also, the Deion Sanders critics are coming out, so we still got a lot to discuss. By the way, media days are coming fast and furious. This is what we're going to do. We're going to take a quick break. We're going to come back. When we do, we will talk all sorts of college football, excuse me. All right, we're going to get back to the show in a minute, but before we do, I have so many people that reach out and say, Torres, you give me hours and hours and hours of free content every day, every month, every year. What can I do to help support the show? Well, you want to support the show and look good in the process. Make sure to check out and support the Aaron Torres Media merch store at aarontorresonline.com/merchandise. Some of you wondering, what can I get in that merch store, Torres? Well, Kentucky fans, we got our Mark Pope Hope and Pope t-shirts. That is right. Mark Pope, monster first year. Year 2 is going to be even better. Get your Hope and Pope t-shirt at aarontorresonline.com/merchandise. Arkansas fans, the Big Pig Invasion is coming. It is here. John Calipari has things rocking. Get your Big Pig Invasion tees. Again, aarontorresonline.com/merchandise. St. John's fans, we have our Big Rick Energy t-shirts. And if you're just a college basketball fan in general, guess what? Your March is for Day Drinking shirt. That is the shirt that you need year-round, but especially for the next NCAA tournament. You can order yours now. By the way, football fans, we got you covered too. Auburn fans, we already know the freeze warning has hit the plains. Make sure to get your freeze warning t-shirts. Also, Nebraska fans, New era, new rules, the t-shirt that you need before the start of this coming season. And oh, by the way, if you're a Colorado fan, if you're just a Coach Prime fan, we have our Deion shirts and hats, more of them than we know what to do with. So to check out the full line of Aaron Torres media merch and also support the show, good news is we're going to have even more for the fall. Check out the Aaron Torres media merch store at aarontorresonline.com/merchandise. And for more information, you can always reach out at Aaron Torres Podcast Questions at gmail.com. All right, everybody. I'm back. Good to be back. So tell you what, want to get to some football topics. College football is coming. Before we do that, you already know the deal. We got to thank our friends. We got to thank our partners. We got to thank Collie Puffs and ColliePuffs.com. Okay, so listen, I've told you all about Collie Puffs, but it's that time of year. July 4th weekend is coming. And guess what? You're going to be on the beach. You're going to be at the lake. You're going to be at the pool. You're going to be in the backyard with your shirt off. And you don't want to look like a filthy slob, do you? Let me ask you, do you want to look like a filthy slob? You do not. And so what you need is a snack that is both healthy but delicious, something your kids will love, your grandkids will love, your parents will love, your grandparents will love, and you will love. You need Collie Puffs, okay? So again, told you the story, but family-owned company. Joey, the founder, huge sports fan, was sitting on the couch one day saying, I'm kind of a big old filthy slob. I need a snack that is both healthy but delicious, something I'm going to love, something my family's going to love. He came up with Collie Puffs. Baked, not fried, avocado oil, no grease, healthy ingredients, but the best part is they taste delicious, okay? And so you can snack on these all day and all night. And yeah, I can't make any guarantees. I'm not the Surgeon General here, but the bottom line is that, they're great, they're healthy, they're delicious. And at this point, listen, you don't have to take my word for it. Why don't you take the word of Collie Puffs themselves? Because they are offering a special deal for listeners of the Aaron Torres Pod. If you go to ColliePuffs.com, that's CAULIPUFFS.com, ColliePuffs.com, ColliePuffs.com, you can also find them on Amazon.com as well. But if you go to ColliePuffs.com and you use promo code Torres at checkout, you get up to 15% off. I don't want to say up to, you get 15% off your purchase. So go to ColliePuffs.com, use promo code Torres. So many of you have tried these. So many of you like them. We appreciate your support, and we thank you for your support of Collie Puffs. ColliePuffs.com, promo code Torres. With that said, let's keep the conversation going. I'll say this. Fun time. It's a little bit of a quieter time on the sports calendar, but it is also a fun time, and let me tell you why. It is because slowly but surely, you can feel a change in the air. You can feel the fact that we are getting so close to college football. Listen, all of our teams, some of them are good, some of them are bad. Some of us are excited, some of us aren't. We're all excited for the sport of college football, though. And it's coming fast. Media days start next week. Kind of crazy. Next week, Big 12 Media Days. The following week, we'll have the SEC. After that will be the Big 10. It just is nonstop, day after day after day. And we're going to start to get news and conversation about the sport of college football. With that said, sometimes you don't really have to wait that long to get news. And there was some interesting news about what I believe. I think Arch Manning is the most interesting player in all of college football going into next year. You can like the Mannings, you can hate them, but obviously he's kind of that next generation, the third generation. He is the quarterback of the most prominent program, maybe in all of college football, right up there with I think Texas is going to probably be preseason number 1 or 2. He's the starting quarterback. His last name's Manning. So it's absolutely fascinating because we haven't seen much of him. We haven't seen a ton of interviews with him. And so it's just going to be fascinating because nobody really knows totally what to expect. Well, nobody except maybe one person, because Paul Feinbaum was on air on Tuesday on ESPN and was asked about Arch Manning, and he gave a quote that it is a take. It is a take. I'm going to read you just the part that caught everybody's attention, and then I'll read you the full quote here in a minute. But he said, "I believe that Arch Manning is the best college football quarterback we have seen since Tim Tebow entered the scene in 2006. That's a take. I mean, Torres has some takes. Saying Arch Manning before he's ever made significant starts, he did make 2 starts last year, but significant playing time, is going to be the best quarterback since Tim Tebow. It's a pretty bold proclamation, okay? And so what I would say, a couple things. First of all, shout out to Paul Feinbaum, okay? Because I swear, listen, I respect anybody that can cut through the noise in our space, in my space, in the media space. And Paul Feinbaum, I swear, I think that ESPN is just like, hey, Feinbaum, no, there's nothing to talk about today. Come on and say something crazy. And I think he has a dartboard with different people's names. And one week he's going to criticize Lincoln Riley, and the next week he's going to criticize Deion Sanders. Then he's going to be Alabama. And this week it happened to be Arch Manning. I swear, my favorite Paul Feinbaum thing, by the way, I'll be quick on this because I want to get back to the quote, was he basically said last year in back-to-back weeks, this was back-to-back weeks, he goes, Deion Sanders is the most overrated coach in the history of college football. Bold take. Then the next week he said, Lincoln Riley sucks. Deion Sanders needs to replace him next year at USC. And it's like, both of them made headlines. So I give Paul Feinbaum credit. He certainly knows how to cut through the noise. But let's get to the quote, because I do think that, to me, Arch Manning is interesting for a couple different reasons. One, I do think what's worth noting is I think there are two different perspectives to look at Arch Manning. Because if you're looking at him as more of a college football fan, you sit there and say, okay, he's the quarterback of the potentially number one. We don't know if Texas is going to be number one, but potentially number one team in college football this year at Texas. And if you're looking at it as a college football fan, you don't need him to be as good as Peyton, as good as Eli, and none of that. But he could still win a national championship as the quarterback of that team. But what I also think is interesting, he is the Heisman favorite. And I think, as importantly, it's also worth noting that on top of that, I think just NFL fans are tuning in expecting to see the number one pick in next year's draft. I think there's going to be a lot of NFL people that don't really care about college football that are tuning in to see, okay, is he as good as he's advertised? Will he be the number one pick? Will he be the starting quarterback for my team? So it's a fascinating paradox, but it also leads me to this question. Why are we positive that Arch Manning is good? I mean, why? Why is he the Heisman favorite? He started 2 games against 2 really bad teams last year. There are more accomplished quarterbacks. There are more, there are quarterbacks maybe in better situations than him. And I think it's pretty clear to me. I think what is pretty clear, he is the Heisman favorite, the overwhelming favorite, because his last name's Manning. And other than that, I don't think there's any reason that he's the Heisman favorite. And so what I want to do is I actually want to read the full Paul Feinbaum quote because I think it's important. But then I want to read a second quote. I know I'm all over the place, but I'll explain why I think, Arch is a little bit overhyped at this point. Okay, so the full Paul Feinbaum quote. He said, "I think there's a reasonably good chance that Arch Manning will be sitting on the front row of New York at the Heisman ceremony. That's assuming that his team does what it's supposed to do and compete not only in the SEC but for a national championship, and I believe they will." He continued, "I think Steve Sarkisian, who is one of the most amazing play callers I've ever seen, made a critical mistake last year. He was way too loyal to Quinn Ewers, who was banged up and really ineffective. Had Arch Manning been installed in the second half of that playoff game like Nick Saban did a couple years ago with Tua, I think there's a reasonably good chance that Texas would have beaten Ohio State and won the national championship. They're very capable of doing it again this year. So I believe that Arch Manning," and this is where he said the Tim Tebow stuff, "will be the best college quarterback since Tim Tebow entered the scene." So that is interesting because he references Quinn Ewers. And what I think is especially interesting about that is that basically it essentially confirms something that I saw last week while I was on vacation. I thought this was a much more interesting quote, and this was from Steve Spurrier. Did you see the Steve Spurrier quote? He said, this is Steve Spurrier on the Duly Noted podcast. He said, "People are picking Texas to win the SEC in football. They've got Arch Manning already winning the Heisman. And my question is, if he was this good, how come they let Quinn Ewers play all the time last year?" And I think, to me, that speaks to exactly what I just said, which is the bottom line is, listen, Arch may be really, really, really good, but I do think that we are basically hyping up solely because his last name is Manning. Because I know what people are going to say. Well, Torres, Texas is really good. Okay, cool. Well, why isn't Julian Sayin, the starting quarterback at Ohio State, the favorite to win the Heisman? Gunnar Stockton, first-year starter at Georgia, just like Arch Manning, also in his 3rd year in the program. I looked it up. In FanDuel, he is 19th in Heisman odds right now. If the argument is, well, Torres, he had a great high school pedigree. He was a player who was a 5-star, was one of the top quarterbacks in his class. Well, Ty Simpson Alabama's starting quarterback, also a first year, also a 5-star. Nobody's talking about him as the Heisman. He's 17th in the Heisman odds. He's the second highest rated player in the Heisman odds, according to FanDuel, behind his own teammate, Ryan Williams. He's second as Alabama players. And so I just bring it up because, to me, you can't argue that the hype on Arch is through the roof for any reason other than the fact that his name is Manning. Because as Steve Spurrier said, and I think it's really important, if Arch was so good, why did he not get more playing time last year? Now, he did make 2 starts, admittedly. He did make 2 starts. One was against UL Monroe. One was against Mississippi State. UL Monroe, 15 of 29, 2 touchdowns, 2 interceptions. Not great. Then he was very good against Mississippi State, 26 of 31, 2 touchdowns, no interceptions. But at the same time, this is where it gets interesting to me, is the reference and the point that both Paul Feinbaum and Steve Spurrier made. If he's so good, why did you not bench Quinn Ewers last year? Because it's easy to forget this now. First of all, Quinn Ewers was a 7th round pick. He was a fine college quarterback. He wasn't a great college quarterback, and he doesn't project to be a great NFL quarterback either. And so if Arch was so good, why did you not put him in at various points throughout the season when your offense clearly needed a boost? Go back to the SEC championship game when you could not move the ball against Georgia. If Arch Manning was that good, why didn't he play then? By the way, don't forget that Arizona State, remember the college football quarterfinal, the Peach Bowl? What was it about? I think it was January 1st. Texas was struggling. Quinn Ewers was struggling. Texas was on the ropes. They got lucky to survive that game. Could not stop Sam Levitt. Could not stop Cam Skattebo, And so it's like, why wasn't Arch Manning placed in either of those games? And what's interesting about Arch that I do think is a little bit easy to forget, he actually, at one point, Quinn Ewers was benched last year when he was healthy. It was against Georgia at home, the biggest game of Texas's season. If you remember, it did not go well for Arch Manning. He looked completely overwhelmed in that game. 3 of 6 passing, 19 yards, 4 carries for -1 yard rushing. And so you can sit there and say, well, it's Georgia. Who cares? They're a great defense. Okay, I get it. But the counter to that is Georgia is the kind of team that you are going to have to beat to win a national championship. And Arch didn't look that good. And so this isn't a bash Arch segment. What it is I think we need to see stuff until we start either proclaiming that he's the best quarterback since Tebow or that he stinks. But if you were asking me, I think he's going to be somewhere in the middle. If he was that good, he would have played by now. Quinn Ewers was not very good last year. And when Arch Manning went in, it wasn't pretty, especially against Georgia. And so I'm just so fascinated. I think this is the most interesting story in all of college football next year. And I'm just so excited to see how it plays out. Because, again, I don't think he has to be great for Texas to win 8, 9, 10 games, maybe even. But to win that 11th game, to compete for an SEC title, to be the Heisman favorite, for Texas to win a national title, at some point, he's going to have to be great. And the one thing I'll say about Texas, remember, that schedule gets a lot tougher this year than it was last year in their first season in the SEC. They obviously opened, not sure if you heard, at Ohio State on week 1 opening weekend. And then later in the season, they have to go to Georgia. Obviously, Florida should be much improved when they go to play at Florida. And so you look at that, you look at Arch Manning, like, we're going to find out how good he is. But I just think, to me, I'm not trying to be a hater. I'm not trying to be a critic. I do kind of wonder, though, like, are we overhyping him just a little bit going into this season? By the way, I assume Arch Manning, I don't think they've officially announced who's going to be at SEC Media Days, but I assume Arch Manning will be there. If he is, he will certainly be a talking point. If he isn't, didn't mean to do that. If he isn't there, there will certainly be a lot of questions about him. All right. There is one other football topic that I do want to get to. And I do want to talk about a certain coach that's always in the headlines. Now, unfortunately, right now he's going through some health issues. Hope he's okay. That is Deion Sanders and the Colorado Buffaloes. Okay. And so listen, if you listen to this show, if you were part of this show at any point last year, you know that I have, for the most part, I think I've been a defender of Coach Prime. I think I've been fair to Coach Prime. I don't think he's perfect, but I think he gets criticized for stuff that he should not be criticized for. Like, I think we can have a balanced, honest conversation about Deion Sanders, right? Listen, things aren't perfect. They're not in any program. They weren't last year at Colorado. Clearly, I think there was maybe something, but I think Shedeur was a great college player, but there was something that clearly turned off NFL people that we did not hear about in Colorado last year. So it wasn't perfect. There were issues just like there were everywhere. But I also don't think we can deny just how good and how improved this program is under Deion Sanders. You go back to when he took over the program, and it's easy to forget, but here are the facts. They were 1-11. They were the worst team in FBS football. That is just worst power conference team, at least in FBS football. That is not my opinion. That's just kind of a fact. They were terrible, okay? He takes over, and within 2 years, again, let's put aside judgment. Let's put aside whatever. And let's just talk facts about Deion Sanders. Within 2 years, they win 9 games. They were a win away from playing for a Big 12 title, which obviously would have put them into playoff consideration. If they had won it, they would have gone to the playoff. They had a Heisman Trophy winner, and they had 4 guys drafted. Now, I know it didn't end well. I know they got destroyed by BYU in the bowl game. But 9 wins, NFL players, an 8-win improvement from 2 years before. I think it's been a largely very successful 2-year run for Deion Sanders. So why do I bring it up? Why are we talking about it? The reason we're bringing it up is because, again, it's talking season. Big 12 Media Days is next week. And I noticed this. I thought it was really funny, is that all the preview magazines are out now, right? Athlon's out, Lindy's out. I have all of them. I'm prepping for the season ahead. And I saw a very interesting quote about this season ahead, right? Because I would think he won 9 games last year. I know he loses a starting quarterback. I know he loses a Heisman Trophy winner that was a great receiver and great cornerback. But at the same time, like, Deion has earned, in my opinion, a little bit of a benefit of the doubt, can put together a winning roster. By the way, Shedeur apparently wasn't as good as everybody thought he was last year because he ends up being a 5th-round pick. So you're talking about like one real difference maker in Travis Hunter if you are under the impression or believe that Shedeur Sanders is somehow overrated. And so I bring it up because Deion always has his critics, okay? But it's one thing for somebody in the media to say he stinks. It's one thing for another fan base to say that he stinks. Like, if you're a fan and you don't like him, whatever. I'm not going to judge. But how about other coaches, okay? So I saw this. I thought this quote was very interesting. Again, magazine season is here. All the magazines are out. And I bring it up because they have all those anonymous coaches quotes, right? So what they'll do is pick every team, whether it's Alabama, Kentucky, Tennessee, Florida, Arkansas, Ohio State, whatever. And they'll ask an opposing coach in the conference what they think about the team. Well, Colorado, in Athlon, they asked an assistant coach, and the quotes were not pretty, okay? So this quote is courtesy of Athlon. Again, the graphics aren't great because producer Matt is traveling for the July 4th holiday. Here's what they said on Athlon about Coach Prime. Quote, "It's still a circus. That's not an insult to Deion, but it also is. They've turned over a ton in the portal, and they're trying to make it out like it's some competition-based result, but they're going to struggle on the offensive line because of the transfers again. It will be interesting to see how Deion manages the culture here. This is a roster with big holes and a lot of questions. Caden Salter, the new starting quarterback, is a good fit for the stuff they ran last year, and they have a lot of good transfer wideouts. Travis Hunter was so good, he was overshadowed. A really good position group in the secondary. Right now, that is their strength. If they can rework the front, the defense might be better overall. His sons are gone. This is the year you really wonder what Deion's long-term plan is." So that was what an opposing assistant coach had to say about Deion Sanders and the Colorado Buffaloes. But the one thing that stood out to me is what they said at the top. It's still a circus. To which you might say, Torres, it is still a circus. To what I would say is, I think it's actually pretty insulting to Deion. It's insulting to Coach Prime. And I think if you're still on this thing that Deion doesn't know what he's doing, I think it's going to kind of make you look like an idiot. And I think based on just simple facts, I think the bottom line is Colorado is again being overlooked just like they were last year. And I'm not saying they're going to win 9 games, But if your perception of them is that it's a circus, I think there's some other people in that conference that need to look themselves in the mirror, because I think it's the furthest thing from it. Again, let's put away my opinion on Colorado. Let's just look at facts, okay? Because again, I think the assumption is you lose Travis Hunter, you lose Deion Sanders, you're going to stink. Well, first off, I would say Colorado has one of the better quarterback situations in the Big 12. Maybe not better than Iowa State with Rocco Becht. Maybe not better than Arizona State with Sam Leavitt, Baron Morgan from Texas Tech. But at the same time, who is Colorado's starting quarterback? Well, we presume it to be, as that report, as that graphic told you, Caden Salter. Well, who is Caden Salter? Well, Caden Salter was one of the best quarterbacks in the portal, who was quite literally pursued by most of college football that needed a quarterback. SEC schools reached out to Caden Salter. He is a guy that 2 years ago at Liberty finished the season, how about this? 2,800 yards passing, 32 total touchdowns, 6 interceptions. Sounds like a guy to me that can compete at the FBS level, at the Power 4 level. Again, I'm not saying he's better than Sam Leavitt. I'm not saying he's the best quarterback in the Big 12. But do I think the quarterback situation is better than it is right now, respectfully, at BYU, which doesn't have a starting quarterback right now, with Jake Retzlaff out? I think it's better. Do I think it's better than Utah? Devin Dampier's coming in as a transfer. We don't know much about him. I'll say this. Even Kansas State. Like, everybody loves Avery Johnson. Can you hit an open receiver that's not 70 yards downfield? Until Avery Johnson can hit short and intermediate throws, I'm sorry, I'm not impressed by him. And so I think Colorado's quarterback situation is pretty good. Let's look at the rest of the roster. Probably the deepest wide receiver group in the Big 12. And by the way, that speaks to what that quote said, because for all the criticism they did reference in the middle of that quote, they have a lot of good transfer wideouts. Now, if you actually pay attention, most of their best wideouts are not transfers. Draylon Miller last year had 32 catches as a true freshman and was an all Big 12 freshman team member. Amarion Miller has had some very good moments in 2 years. Then you get into the transfers. Hakeem Williams, to me, is one of the difference makers that everybody's excited about. Former 5-star, was at Florida State. Former 5-star that everybody was excited about. So you had him in the portal. I'm trying to think of who was the other kid. What was it? I want to make sure I have this right. Give me 1 second here. I want to make sure I have the name right and all of that, because they did get another addition late in the portal cycle that did commit to them late in I think it was in the spring or the summer. I don't have the kid's name in front of me, but the bottom line is one of the best receivers in the spring portal committed to Colorado. So they agree that the wide receiver room is pretty good. Quarterback is going to be better than people realize. Oh, by the way, probably the best offensive tackle in the Big 12. Jordan Seaton, former 5-star, remember, was all Big 12 freshman team last year. I believe all Big 12 third team. And remember this, even Athlon, who says that the roster, it's quote unquote a circus, has Jordan Seaton as all Big 12 first team at the offensive tackle position. Then you go to the defense. Well, I mean, Colorado stunk on defense last year. Actually, no, they didn't. They actually led the Big 12 in sacks, and they led the Big 12 in tackles for loss. They were filthy up front. Now, they don't bring back everybody. They did lose B.J. Green to the NFL. Nikhil, one of the big names transferred to Alabama over the course of the last couple months. And listen, I understand that's the world that we live in. I get it. This, that, the other thing. And so I'm not saying that they return everybody. Nikhil Hill-Green, that was the player that transferred to Alabama. But you know who they do return? A lot of production in the front seven, okay? These are some of the players that are returning off a team that led the Big 12 in sacks and tackles for loss. Keaton Wade, 7.5 TFLs, 4 sacks in 6 games last year. 6 games, 7.5 TFLs, 4 sacks. So I'm not great at math, but if he stays healthy for 12 games, that comes out to about 15 TFLs and 4 sacks. Not bad. Sam Okunlola, also back, 7 TFLs, 3 sacks. Arden Walker back, 6.5 TFLs, 4.5 sacks. Amari McNeil, 6 TFLs, 3.5 sacks. So you're talking about one of the deeper defensive lines with the deeper returning talent than most teams in that league. And again, this is off of a team. It's not like they were terrible in the defensive front. Led the Big 12 in sacks, led the Big 12 in tackles for loss. Doesn't sound like a circus to me. And then obviously there's the secondary where they said that is a strength of the team. Cornerback DJ McKinney is a guy that even last year people were talking about as a potential first-round pick. He had 3 interceptions last year, and they got some other nice pieces there as well. So I'm just going to ask you a couple things. Team, top half of the league quarterback, best offensive tackle, deepest wide receiver group, deepest front seven, great secondary. Does that sound like a circus to you? Here's the other, by the way, if you're going to make that argument about Colorado, that's fine. But you know who that actually sounds like a lot to me? LSU. Returning starting quarterback who was okay, was not great, but entirely new O-line, went crazy in the portal with an entirely new O-line, entirely new receiving core, a bunch of new players on defense. Nobody's calling LSU a mess. Ole Miss only returns like 5 starters. Everybody else is out of the portal. Nobody's calling them a circus. And so it's clearly just a knock on Deion. By the way, it's also worth noting, for a place that's a circus, they return most of their coaching staff, and I think that's an underrated part of this. Pat Shurmur, back as the offensive coordinator. Robert Livingston, who I think is going to be back in the NFL next year. He came from the NFL. I think he's going to be an NFL defensive coordinator before long. He is back this year. So you return the staff, top-end quarterback, best wide receiver group in the league, best front seven in the league, elite secondary. Doesn't sound bad to me. Also, Alejandro Mata is back at kicker, one of the best kickers in the league. So it's like, what are we even talking about here? Like, if you don't like Coach Prime, just say it. And I think this is a team that is again lining up to be better than people expect. Okay. Really quickly with the schedule. And again, I apologize, producer Matt's not here. Normally we would have all these graphics ready to go. The schedule is, all things considered, actually pretty manageable, considering that they are playing basically all of the best teams in the Big 12, okay? They open with Georgia Tech at home. Georgia Tech could be pretty good. But of their biggest games in the Big 12, Arizona State, in my opinion, will be the preseason favorite. That game's at home. Iowa State might be picked second in that league. That game is at Colorado. BYU, I think even without Jake Retzlaff, still really good. That game is at Colorado as well. That's actually already officially a night game, a 7:15 Pacific time start, so you know that place is going to be rocking. Of the toughest road games, Utah is going to be tough because I always trust Kyle Whittingham, but new quarterback, new offensive coordinator, so it's going to take some time. At Houston, we'll see if Willie Fritz gets it going. And then they do end the season at Kansas State, and I'll just be real. I just don't buy the Kansas State thing. Avery Johnson, again, can you complete a pass? Like, can you complete like a 10-yard out? So I just bring it up because the Colorado, listen, all I'll say is, like I said, I think people are really, really, really underestimating this Colorado team. I don't think people are giving them the respect that they deserve. And I think transparently, I think we're going to be in a position where Colorado again surprises people. I looked it up. Their over-under is 5.5. They're winning more than 5.5. I'm just telling you that right now. And I just think, once again, people don't like Deion. They want to be critical. Look at the facts. This team is better than you realize. All right, I'll tell you what. I think that's it for this episode of the Aaron Torres Pod. Good crowd. We appreciate everybody joining us on a Wednesday morning. Appreciate everybody on a Wednesday morning, and we do appreciate everybody joining us. You know, I'll say this. Once we get to football season, we generally do morning shows. I just find that, you know, during football season, you know, Monday night is dedicated to football. Thursday night is dedicated to football. So we'll probably go back to morning schedules during the week. But for now, we're going to get out of here. If you're not subscribed to the Aaron Torres Pod, please make sure to do so. Apple, Spotify, Amazon Music, Google Music, wherever you listen to podcasts, make sure you're subscribed. Also, make sure to rate and review the show. Go ahead, give us a quick 5 stars. If you're on YouTube, go ahead and just click that subscribe button. We do appreciate your support, as we are well over 57,000 subscribers of this show. Other than that, I think I'm going to get out of here. This is probably the last live show before the July 4th holiday. We'll have some stuff over the next couple days to kind of keep everybody engaged for when you're traveling and when you need stuff to listen to. That's probably it for the live shows until next week. And then we got media days, and it's full speed ahead. Appreciate your support. I'll be back soon. Thank you. Shout out to Torrin Craig. Shout out to Rachel, who hates my voice. Shout out to JJ Reddick, you F-head. Unblock me, bro. We'll have content all week long. Probably back with a